Hey, it's Rita here, and really pleased to bring you this next episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. This time we are focusing on change, and in particular, our speaker Valentina Coin has shared with us the successes of the best transformations. So this is not one you will want to miss. And if change, transformation, managing ambiguity, all of the above is within your landscape over the next little while, then this is one you want to tune into. A very warm welcome to Valentina Coin. Valentina, great to have you on the Deliberate Leader podcast today.
Excellent to be here. Thanks for having me, Rita.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Val, I think that's the name you go by, so we're going to continue to call you Val rather than beautiful Valentina, of course. Val's organisation supports leaders basically to lead more successful digital transformation. So I know, Val, just before we came on, you were having a chat about change, and we know that in most organisations, it's happening at a rapid rate. What are you seeing in relation to organisations managing change in your space?
Oh, 100%. This is, I think everyone is paying attention to change. As I think we've all seen the change in the business landscape as a result of COVID a few years ago, and working from home and all these new dynamics that are showing up. And so I think every leader that I speak with, so not every business owner, but every leader that I speak with, are paying attention to change in the organization and are really being mindful of which experience they are providing, not only to their clients, but to their teams when they come and work for their organization, because that becomes part of the organizational fabric.
Yeah, and so you said every leader, but not necessarily every business owner. What are you noticing that's a difference there?
We like our distinctions here at 𝗵𝗲. Look, what we do is we're seeing a lot of movement in the industry, and we're leaning towards groups of business owners that prefer to call themselves leaders rather than business owner, and separating the two aspects of their identity very strongly, in the sense that there's a line of thinking that says, well, I'll be a people manager, I'll put in place my systems, I'll put in place automations, I'll put in place AI, and my business will run by itself, and it will be hunky-dory. And to them I say, great, good luck. We don't quite see it that way, and that's okay. I'm seeing a lot of very intentional partners to business owners, advisors, whether they are a business coach, whether they are an accountant or an HR expert, and they are really focusing on the experience piece. And they are really focusing on, how can I, as a leader, as opposed to a manager or a business owner, facilitate the experience of working for me in my organization, so that then my team members, my staff, can focus on providing an experience to my customer. And this is what we really, really like to see as a shift. And, I think I do think the working from home and the workforce demanding more from leaders, more than just a paycheck, but an actual leader, has had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, so I guess the distinction I'm hearing there is, if you're going in, as you say, like a business owner, but even some leaders that just go in with a quite a hands-off approach. It's not even one of delegation, but it's more removing the human element to it. Whereas what I'm hearing you say is, well, it really needs, if we're going to focus on the interaction and the connection as an experience, then it requires more of that human, the human to turn up. As great as what all these tools are, you mentioned AI and systems and processes and all of that, as good as what they are, we still need that human interaction really to facilitate the experience.
100%. It's about powering the human performance with technology, not replacing it. Yeah. And I think that's what sometimes it's very tempting and very appealing for certain business owners to think about the replacement, but for us, it's about mapping out. And listen, we love systems, we love technology, we love processes, we love all of that organizational aspect, but we recognize that without using them in service of a more powerful workforce, you don't really create a memorable business. And
Yeah,
this is what we're all about. So yeah, we do use a lot of those tools. My recommendation there would be to really be mindful of not jumping on the latest trend or the latest automation or AI shiny thing, which we're all attracted to, us not excluded, but really analyze what does the process look like. Say you're talking about a staff onboarding or a client onboarding. What are all the steps of that client journey, and at which step do we need, which level of human versus technology do we need at each step? And that can be because of this is who we are as a company, this is our mission, vision, values, but it can also be very much client-led or staff-led. So have we listened to them? Have we listened to their perspective? Have we listened to the expertise of our team that tells us that, yes, a calendar booking system is great, but our client want to get on the phone and have a good old chat. And that is part of the service we provide, not just book a doctor's appointment, done.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is really focused on more of that human interaction, as you say. And for some people, that incidental chat, particularly because, you know, people are maybe a little bit more excluded because they're working from home. They might have the, you know, less opportunity for that human interaction, that you can see that some people are really craving that through simple things like booking, you know, meetings or appointments.
Yeah.
Val, in the space that you work in, because you do partner with organisations around digital transformation, what are kind of the key things that you're seeing from a change perspective that leaders are having to think about more than what they ever have?
I think they are having to really, which we've hinted at already, but it's worth really going into detail about. They are really having to pay attention less so to the tech and the process and what we would call the system to make it all work, and more to bringing their people with them. So setting a clear vision. We all know we need a vision. We all know we need, you know, KPIs, and we need all the things to measure what we're doing and how we're doing it. But I'm seeing more and more leaders stop and say, well, this vision makes sense to me and the C-suite. Yes, it's giving us what we're looking for, but how is that then translating to the middle management? How is that then translating to the people on the ground? And so setting a clear vision doesn't anymore mean we are having a leadership team lock themselves in a room for 3 days and develop the vision, and then we'll share it with our team in our chat. This is actually becoming, let's make it a group experience again. Let's bring them in. What does it look like for them? So leadership still sets the long-term vision. There's no doubt about that. It needs to be aligned with the business objective. But then what does it look like for each different team member in my team? What's their vision aligned with my vision? And allowing for that flexibility creates a more compelling narrative around change that then facilitates you bringing your people with you, as opposed to just going, this is where we're going.
Yeah, because they've helped to create it with you right from the start.
100%.
Yeah. And do you find that, I know, you know, leaders listening to this may think, well, that's great. It's really time consuming though. Like if I go out and consult and get all those opinions and then bring them together, you know, time consuming, I might end up annoying or disengaging or making very frustrated a segment of my workforce. What are your thoughts around that? Like, how can leaders minimize the risk of that?
I think it's a very valid thought and a very reasonable thought to have. I really do believe, though, that the cost of not doing that in the long term, and that's the challenge, right? The cost of not doing so is felt the year after or 3 years after, when you don't see that change initiative really take root and be strong in your organization. So what comes to mind is try to do it at a smaller scale and see how much of an impact it makes. Of course, you can leverage technology to help with the perspective gathering from your teams, but it is really, really valuable to take the time and do that. Slow down to speed up, essentially. It's my advice. And again, leverage your team probably is another piece of insight that I could provide. So rather than nominating one person to do the whole initiative, let's break it down into different sections, and maybe each department leader can look after their own department and each team leader can look after their own areas, and then we go and meet and have that group conversation, because really listening to your people's perspective pays off. Even just the act of running those interviews and gathering those perspectives, even if you don't use them as much, which you will, but even if you didn't, just the act of going through the motion does really a lot for teams.
And teams that do that well and organizations that do that well, how much does it positively impact their ability to successfully complete a transformation?
Look, the data around this is astonishing when one looks into it. I think Gartner is always a good resource, but I think it's something around 90% of change initiatives fail, and 70% of those can be reconducted down to people not adopting that change. And those figures are incredible, 70% due to people not adopting the change, which could mean tech, could mean process, could mean something else entirely. And so to me, that should be proportionate to the investment that a business leader is making in this upcoming change. Take the time to bring your people with you, because it's going to have a tremendous impact on the success. And it's also not a one and done. We want to hear their perspective at the beginning, all the way through, at the end of the project, and then also 6 months after, 12 months after. It's a shift in company culture to a degree, because we are moving from a one and done to a continuous improvement mindset. And so you never really stop doing that if you take that position.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think go ahead.
That might also help mitigate how big of a task it looks like. Because if I know I'll be doing it regularly every 3 to 6 months, then it's not a massive operation that I'm doing now. I'll do it every 3 months. Send out a survey, go off site for a coffee catch up with my team. It doesn't have to be formal.
Yeah. I think, I always remember really good project managers that I've worked with in the past in a corporate life, that we would go live with either a technology implementation or some level of change that we were introducing, and the go live date was never the last date in the project plan. Like, it was probably 3/4 of the way through, and then after that there was a period of post-implementation. Like, obviously you do your reviews and you see how people are settling in, but it kind of makes me think that if you've ever had the experience of building a house or renovating a house and you've had to move out and then move back in, you don't really know whether your ideas are going to be as you intended until you move back into the space, and that's post your moving in date. So on average, how much time are organisations and leaders spending after go live really to make sure that the project and the transformation is properly embedded, and how much time should they be spending?
Very, very good question. I'll give 2 answers, if I may. So first off, I would suggest, wherever possible, a staged rollout is what we recommend. So pick a focus group and do a soft live. So whether it's a location or a particular team, a smaller group, say your organization has 400 staff members across 3 states. Pick one local area, pick 10 to 15 workers across potentially 3 different roles so that you can see it play out, and then test that with them. So if you think an implementation would typically be anywhere between 3 to 6 months at the very least, this is what we see, then I would make a soft live at least a month. That will give you, something like 2 nice pay runs and a couple of nice invoice runs, as we do. We always think in those terms. And then after you learn from that, you make a few adjustments so that your focus group A can share their insights if it was really awesome, but B, if it wasn't, they can share how quickly we were able to pivot and change things, so that when the real go live happens, the wider team can hear their experience and their perspective and go, oh, we can see the change. They've been really quick to turn things around for us. That's amazing. They really care about our experience. And the second answer that I would give is 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the change is, even if it's a shorter project, really 12 months. Because it takes that long to really assess, has the initiative really stick or not? And I wouldn't wait the 12 months naturally to check in. I would check in, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And really make those adjustments. And if something doesn't feel right, no news is not necessarily good news.
Yeah.
So I would listen to those alarm bells if they do happen post-implementation. And just really, again, come to the table open-minded with curiosity. What is happening? What is working? Why? What is not working? Why are we here? And how can we together find the solution? And that requires fantastic company culture to be able to do that.
That's right. Because that's about being able to not so much admit, but, think about, well, this didn't go so wrong. This didn't go to plan. And we are prepared to acknowledge that and now put in place something else to rectify it. That takes real courage from business.
I think, yeah, that's the mark of a true leader, being able to say, hey, we did it this way and it didn't quite work out, and we're owning it and we're making changes. And I have tremendous respect for leaders who manage to do that. And teams really respond to it. I see it all the time, because we're here to advise, but at the end of the day, the team has its own dynamics that we simply witness from the outside and can't really influence. And some of the best leaders I've met in the space were actually the ones that called everybody into a room and said, right, this didn't go to plan. We had to backtrack and we'll do it again because we care about you. And that's the message. It isn't we messed up. It's we care about you, therefore we're doing better next time.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, and that you find that messaging works, whether it's employees or your customers, that you're kind of conveying that message to?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because we're all human. We're all, we all want to be part of something. And when we feel excluded from that something, there's something that happens. I think leaders sometimes have the illusion of, I'll keep it simple for my team and I won't share, because maybe because they don't need to know, maybe because I think it'll take too long, maybe because it'll confuse them. But truly sharing as openly as possible when something goes right and when something goes wrong is even more powerful, I think. So yeah, client stuff, it does not matter. I have found an incredible reserve of patience and understanding when communication flows. It's when it doesn't flow that, yeah, we lose a bit of momentum.
Yeah, probably trust and connection too along the way. Val, I'm interested in, transformation and change, it's on everybody's mind and almost in every conversation that I have with organizations. In your experience, why is it so hard to do this? Because it doesn't matter how many resources we throw at it and how many approaches, and notwithstanding that you've given already some different approaches and really making it about that human experience. But why is it fundamentally so hard in organizations when we're trying to transform and change anything?
I think the real question is, why is change hard for individuals? And you've hinted at that, right? It's really, organizations are made of individuals, and individuals find change challenging. The bell curve is obviously what comes to mind. But also, so you have, the middle of the bell curve, you've got the majority of individuals in an organization. So you've got the early adopters over here that go, yay, change, give it to me. And then you've got the stragglers who go, no, we should do it the way it's always done. But really the bell curve is misleading, because the bell curve also has resistance. They don't sit in the middle. They sit on the resistance side. And there's power in the group thinking as well that comes from that. another really, really good framework that we use a lot that is really connected to this is, so we try to identify leaders in an organization, whether they hold the position or not. They might be leaders without holding the seat. And then we recommend that anybody work one-on-one with those leaders to champion that change. So identify a person that is resistant to change. That is fine. That's not a problem. Work with them individually on why that change is so hard and taking the time again to understand them. One of the tools we use a lot is the grief curve, the 𝗂𝗵𝗄 grief curve. It's used a lot in obviously psychology and when we're talking about grief and loss. But I find it extremely useful in organizational change because the mind resists change, but the next layer, even if one is aware of it and goes, okay, I understand that, but the next layer is I am grieving something. And what is that something that I am grieving? Is it control? Is it respect? Is it a task that I enjoy doing that now I don't get to do anymore? Or is it sometimes there is an overlap between the identity of a person and who they are in the workplace. And so, of course, if a new piece of technology comes in to replace me, of course, there's going to be a loss in my mindset that leads me to resist the technology, but it's not because of the technology. It's because of that grieving that's going on. So that would probably be my recommendation. Yes, it's organizational change, and yes, there is resistance to change, but if we break it down into the smaller parts of it, it becomes individual resistance to change. And that is maybe not easier to manage, but more understandable, I would say.
When people can identify where they're at on the change curve, then it helps. Like you said before, breaking the change down means you're not looking at this mammoth change. It still is in totality, it's a mammoth change, but you've broken it down, so you're just kind of going stage by stage. And I think when people look at that and they can identify where they're at on the change curve, they understand that it is a stage. We don't know how much time they'll spend in there, but they know that there is something else that then will come. Yeah.
Yes. And what you said there, Rita, is actually really crucial. Helping them to self-identify in that curve. It's very, very empowering because it removes the fear of the unknown, and it almost separates where I am today, again, with who I am. It's not me who is afraid of change. It's just my current state in this precise moment. And it returns to them a measure of, or at least it aims to return a measure of control over what's happening. And I've seen it many, many times. It's not even a linear progress. Sometimes we just go back in the curve, and that's okay. And that's okay because we all go through it. We've recently just implemented a new piece of tech in our own business, and I got very frustrated. Even witnessing it every day. So no one is immune.
Yeah, and even as practitioners, when you're doing this stuff all the time, it's sobering to be reminded from time to time that we also experience these things. I think it's actually good that happens from time to time. So we've got that real connection with the people and those we serve around that. So when leaders are trying, because I think the most frustrating thing that leaders tell me, and I remember this from leading big teams, is that when you're going through the change, because as you say, it's not linear, we go backwards and forwards, and often it's described as more of a roller skater or a roller coaster, not a roller skater. You know what I meant. Thank goodness. For those who can't see, I was doing the motion of a roller coaster. Because it's often described that way, what's the advice you find yourself giving most often to leaders that are becoming frustrated with how much time it's taking? Because we have no control over the time it takes as leaders, for how people are going to experience those different stages of change. What do you find yourself most commonly saying to leaders?
I would most commonly just say to them, slow down to speed up again, as frustrating as that is. And then I would a bit cheekily maybe encourage them to find where they are in that curve, about how long it's taking. And that often has a sobering effect as well. Oh, because we provide all of these tools to leaders, and sometimes we see them being so excited to use it with their team, and they see success sometimes not so much, but that's okay. But rarely we turn it back towards ourselves. And so that is usually the advice that I give, which I know it's blurring the lines a little bit between consulting and coaching, but again, you can't do technology without people, and you can't do consulting without coaching. So
Oh, that's exactly right. No, I think that's good. I enjoy the non-purist form of both coaching and consulting. That's fine. I think, leaders, what we forget sometimes is that we've been able to sit with the idea, the concept for a lot longer than those, that we're introducing it to, whether it doesn't matter which stakeholder it is, whether it's your customers, your people, whatever stakeholder group it is, we've been sitting with it. So wherever progressed we are in that change curve, it's acknowledging that time, which sits at the bottom of that change curve, does help for us to move through. The thing that's probably frustrating is it's unknown, the amount of time. What will take someone 5 minutes because they're very quick to move on. They might then scoot right back to, whatever stage they were at. But it might take someone else, 5 weeks. So it's just having that acknowledgement that it's going to be different for every person.
And one of the things that helps with speeding that up without controlling it too much is for us over communication. I used to say communication, I now say over communication, because what I call communication, I get a lot of pushback on. And again, it's down to that repetition, where as leaders we might be in that change day in and day out. We know exactly what's happening, but our teams might have only a fraction of our understanding. And so if we keep sharing concepts, if we keep repeating things, and we're dropping seeds 6 months before the change that this is coming, when it then actually does come around, we get to say, hey, do you remember when we said that last December? Here we are, and repetition. And that helps a lot with the frustration piece as well, accepting that a degree of repetition is unavoidable. And it doesn't mean our team didn't listen the first time. It doesn't mean our team doesn't get it. It is just human nature. We need to hear it more than once.
How many times do you, I know there's different research and data. How many times do we need to communicate something before it's actually heard?
I would answer that with that it's different for everybody, and until that person is reflecting it back to me.
Yeah, okay. So you'd be
probably
yeah, but that's good. You'd be looking, so your evidence would be when they've understood it and they can tell me what they've heard, either paraphrase or, so really that active listening, that demonstration of active listening back, then you would be satisfied that they've heard the message.
Yes. Whether they reflect it back to me or even to their own team or their own colleagues, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've been surprised in session from stakeholders that I was least expecting it from, piping up and talking to their team member on the call. I'm like, okay, that landed. Yeah. Those 7 phone calls did do their job.
So no, I'm going to say 3, but yeah, it could be 7, it could be 8. And that I really like that. It's a really good tip, because otherwise we might go, I've got to communicate it 3 times before it's heard. But I think the person will hear it most clearly at the point in time when it's more it's the most meaningful for them. I think that's the key to it, really, because when they've looked at or they've heard or whatever, seen the message, and they've been able to identify what they need from it, and then they can communicate it back to someone else, and you go, yeah, it's landed. Yeah,
exactly, spot on. And also I wouldn't discount again the value of informal situation and informal communication. So you might send out 3 formal emails or videos or guides about this particular topic, but if you can drop that same piece of information in an informal, casual, passing manner a few more times, it's going to go a long way.
So is that like repurposing your content almost, Al? Yeah. So you're taking the guts of your message is the same. Is that what you mean? And then you're using a different mode and a different method?
Yeah. So 100%. And another cool exercise that business leaders can do is, of course, they're going to know their team already, but they can do a bit of, and again, personality tests we don't like putting people in boxes, but they have sometimes their value. So if someone learns better by, we can ask a team, for example, if we're talking about a training material, for example, we can ask our team, do you prefer video or written content or a step-by-step PDF with photos? And they can answer us. I will present that medium to that particular individual first, but I will make the other 2 or 3 still available because they are receiving the same information from multiple channels. That will help. So they might like to listen to a video, but also read through the transcript, and that might really help. And they might come in handy. For example, if I can search the transcript, I think Val said last week the word calendar booking. Let me search for calendar booking, and then I go to the video, and then I find my snippet. So repurposing, encouraging team members to support each other in that learning, all of that.
Yeah. And
it
so
sounds like a lot. I know.
It does, but I think it's also, it's geared to what you were talking about earlier on, which is the experience of that individual. So it's making sure, because we absorb and synthesize information in different ways. I don't particularly like step-by-step, very detailed instructions. I'd much rather kind of look at it and go, oh, how do I figure this out? That's kind of, so I learn by doing, but a lot of people are different. I think that's the key takeaway there, is really paying attention to what will people's different experience of this be, and can we give them some control back, particularly when they're going through often they feel like control is taken away, but can we give them some control back on how they're even understanding kind of what's going on for them in this change?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Control is a really powerful way to give them ownership. Because we aren't saying, here's the training, attend it. We're saying, you can receive it in these 4 different mediums. Yeah. It's not a yes or no, it's a this or that.
Yeah, and you pick what's going to suit you based on your learning style and your personality profile and all of that. Yeah. And Val, obviously here at the Deliberate Leader, we talk about deliberate a lot. We talk about being deliberate. So leaders that you work with that are leading large transformational change, what does deliberate mean in that context?
To me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way that the word that we use isn't so much deliberate, but I think we are getting to the same concept. We use intentional a lot, which it would be the same. So what we recommend leaders do before any change is, in its inception, before we start making any kind of change actually happen, is build what we call an intentional system. And an intentional system is born by looking at your processes, your people, and your technology in service of that bigger experience that you're providing. And it starts by slowing down, assessing all of those pillars. Where are we? Where do we want to be? How is our vision? How clear is it? And how can we help our team get on board with it? Involvement of teams. That's how we are also intentional and deliberate in this change. What we are saying is not so much, do you want this to happen or not? But this is happening, come with us. We want your expertise with us. Deliberately assessing who's in front of you so that I can provide you with the best tools to succeed, which doesn't mean, do you have the skills or not? And if not, I'll hire someone else. It means, let's sit down together and figure out, what do you need to be successful? And then consistency. To us, a deliberate approach would be to slow down so we can speed up later, plan it, strategize, put everything in place, and then consistently execute it until we see success. Of course, let's remain flexible. Let's use curiosity. Let's pivot when needed. But for deliberate change to happen, we need consistency as well. And to a degree, creating a framework allows you the freedom to blur the lines a little bit wherever the situation calls for it.
Yeah, because I think that framework allows you to to see it and then know what adaptations you need to make. Because so, you know, these projects can last so long. We know change and transformation projects, like usually they're more than 12 months. Like we're looking at 2-3 years in some cases, and things change. You know, things adapt and change in businesses during that time. So I think what you're saying there makes absolute sense with creating a system that allows you that flexibility as things do change. To change if necessary, and that doesn't mean kind of every 5 minutes changing.
Mhm.
Course. So yeah, I love that. So your intentional system, Val, that you mentioned was that process, people, and technology, and really looking at those things in depth and evaluating them before you embark on any particular technology change, which usually comes as a result.
That's right. And for them to really be in service of that experience. That's what we find makes it really intentional. And of course, the temptation is to start from the technology, because that's the shiny object, because that's going to give us the most uplift. And it does, and it's powerful, but it is an amplifier. So it will amplify what's already there. And therefore, to be intentional, it is worth taking the time to assess people and process first and experience what are we driving towards before we go and put in place the tech.
Yeah, because sometimes, I mean, the tech, everything often rides on the tech. Like it's got to be right because it's got to come in and fix this thing, but it's the thing that can also cause the most pain if it's the wrong solution that you've gone to because you're relying too heavily. Because if we think about those things like a stool with 3 legs, you know, if you're focusing on one, you know, just process, just people, just technology, yeah, the whole thing will fall. You kind of, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is you need that focused attention and effort on all 3 of those.
100%.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great. Val, thank you so much for sharing so many pieces there that are about helping us, you know, basically navigate change and transformational change in organizations, but doing so with that really deliberate and intentional lens. You've given us so much food for thought. So thank you very, very much. And we'll make sure that we pop your website onto the show notes so people can go in and check out the services that you provide. Thanks so much, Val.
Thank you, Rita. It was a pleasure to chat.
It's Rita, and I've just finished my conversation on the Deliberate Leader podcast with Valentina Coin. Now, Valentina has given us so much to think about as leaders, particularly when we're leading change and transformation, which I know many of us are. And if we're not doing it now, we've either done it recently or about to do it, because change is happening thick and fast in every single aspect of business. So this one here has got a bunch of takeaways. So you'll need your notepad, I reckon, for this one. And even if you are going out on a walk, then be sure to capture the insights. But Valentina talked at length. Really, she gave us the secrets for leading successful transformation. And she talked about it, you know, really being an experience as opposed to it being a process that we go through. We are dealing with humans at the end of the day. And we talked at length about the stages that humans progress, you know, when they're dealing with change and what can sometimes lead to these resistors and how we can smooth them over and overcome them. She certainly talked a lot about slowing down. And I think that's probably going to be frustrating for people to hear when you're managing change and you've got deadlines and projects to, you know, and milestones to meet. But I think it was a really good reminder around thinking intentionally and deliberately as you're planning out and going through those stages of transformational change, and really paying attention to it as an experience for your people and bringing that human element in. She finished with a really great intentional system for change, and that was thinking about our processes, our people, and our technology. And what came to mind as she said that was a 3-legged stool. And if one of those legs is, you know, not quite right, then it can feel very wobbly as you try and sit on that stool. So tune in if you haven't already. I hope you enjoy that conversation with Valentina.